I'm going to start off in this video help tutorial talking about the project management reference that is found on the project management main screen. This is where you create a project either through an RFQ or RFP where you're doing a request for proposal or you're going to be quoting to another company. And in order to understand the approach, if you have not had a lot of experience with project management, you can go to this screen, which is the Project Management Reference screen. Let's go ahead and go over there and look at what we have here. The Project Management Reference screen quotes an individual website and allows you to go to that website. And over here on this side, you can put information as far as what is on that particular site that you're referencing. And then up here, you're going to describe the title of that particular reference, the reference from, and it tells where it's from. The actual website can be copied and pasted from the URL at the top of that screen for whatever browser you're using. And then the reference comments. Now you can comment about the actual company and how it's going to be done as far as the individual information. In this particular case, there are different organizations or companies out there that are describing how to use project management. When I say a company, it's a reference company that's explaining how project management works. In this particular case, you'll see that there's some narrative here and here that come from that particular website, or you can put your own reference comments in here about what that information is and how it pertains to the projects and the way you run your projects. So if you go to view that reference, for example, you can go to the website, and that would bring up a website where you can actually view that information is how it was looked up. Yet there's a place over here where you can take the text from that screen. And I'm going to just pop this over real quickly to show it to you. We took this particular Google search and came up with this information from Project Insight. Now Project Insight, we copied the information. Now we could take it and paste it directly from there where there's certain things like project versus operations and so forth. And you can add that data in here. If you have PDFs that they'll download, that you can download, you can load the PDF in or delete the one later on if you want to add a different one. The whole idea behind this reference is you go over here and click on the list view and you'll see that there's a number of already supplied information over here. This is a list view. A list view, what it does is it takes multiple records. In this particular case, there's one that we were just looking at, and then there's another one down here. If I click on it, you can see that there's a PDF file in this one. And I'm going to go ahead and say I want to see that and see what the information in that record has in it. I can click on the edit that screen, and then it comes over here, and now there's a PDF in here that if I'm looking at it, I can scroll through it page by page, and it gives a description that relates to each phase and each kind of a entity or task that's involved, shows you all the kind of information that you'd want to use as far as project management is concerned. It outlines the entire process. Now, I've had a lot of experience over 40 years doing project management. These are not the Bible. Basically what this is something you can do with a reference, and in different countries, like if I go to the UK and I'm looking at how they do project management, there are some critical differences in the way they approach project management as you would do in another country. In the US, we have multiple different companies or organizations that reference how to do project management. What I've done in this application is I've gone in and decided that what I'm going to do is take my experience plus the references and address those different things. Now, if I come down to the bottom of the screen like I'm showing here, I can open up the PDF, which you're looking at here, and review it, or I can download it as a PDF download and read it on my desktop. So let's go ahead and click on the PDF itself. Now it's not going to fit in there for the total reference, what you're looking at on this screen, but you can see at the top, it has the topics and breakdown of what they're going to cover in here. So if I hit the topic, it's going to go down and break it down so that I can see it. Now understand this is actually embedded in the application so you can look at it for reference. And you can see in here they start out with a history, and you can see over here risk management and all these different things are included in here. In the process groups, for example, initiating a process planning, there should be budgeting in here, and that's what my system does. It really addresses the budgeting and the outline. And let's go ahead and go back here, and I'm going to just bring up this, and you can see that there's some things in there: approaches, traditional approaches, and other approaches for doing the critical process of understanding what the project is going to have in it and what the requirements are. Whoever sent the request for quote, whatever company you're going to try to win their contract, this is what you'd be looking at and planning with. It's a very good background in general, and it has all the things that we include in our app as far as initiating studies and making sure that we're executing all the requirements as the RFP is designating them. And that's probably the first thing we have to be aware of when we're working in here. Take the references. If you don't have experience with them, read them. If you need to, add additional ones and review them until you fully understand what you're going to be doing and up against. Now I'm going to navigate back with one click to go back to Project Management Marketing. On this side of the screen, you can see that since this is the primary screen, we're going to be adding a record in here. When you add a record, it's going to initiate the project management ID for that particular client for that particular proposal. And as you can see here, and this is depending upon how you do your proposal number, I've just taken proposal 5 zeros and a 1. In this particular case, I could go to, nearly 80,000 different proposals if I wanted to. I could, or even more than that. I can just continue with this number. You have a lot of space. But you take your existing method of doing proposals and you would go ahead and put the proposal ID number in here. You do that when you add the new number. So for example, if I went over here and said I want to look at the other one, the next one in here, because I have 2 sample records, I could go over here to do the action and I say, go show the next record. And here I have proposal number 2. So this tells you that these are sequential, and they should be sequential. And you can find that out if you go to the list view for marketing list view. Let's go do that. You can see that there's a listing like we had on the last one, and these are referencing the different projects that you have in your company and where they're working. This could be something where you're reviewing it and deciding whether to bid or no bid, but at any rate, you have the information and you can easily find it. And over here, we're going to be showing you later how you find records using the find that's built into the application. Going back over here, because we're basically looking how to navigate and find things in this particular area. If I have a web address in here, I can click on Open Website for the company and open their website in the browser. Down here you have the information for the company and the date that you actually started the process of your RFP or your request for a proposal from another company. So you can do it either way. You have the choice with your company to do that. Down here you take company notes and you can put an infinite number of pieces of information in here. You can break them down by date and whatever as far as things that you're relating to about this particular project. There are going to be a lot more things in this application where you can take notes and information that's related to the process. Going to the very top now, because we already did the ad, let's go across. Now, of course, we already covered that there's a main app map, and the app map helps you to navigate through the entire application and also run the reports. The next thing is going to be the Do Action menu, and we're going to cover this once in this screen, and it's the same for all screens. The first thing you do is you can say Start a Search, and what that will do is it'll turn all of the records over here with a little spyglass on them where you can actually look up and find things that are in here based on the information that's available for all records, all projects in the entire database. So if I wanted to find, for example, the one I'm reading right now would be the application for this particular proposal number, I could put the P, 5 zeros, and 1, and when I complete the search by going over here and saying perform the search, that would do what it's supposed to do and show that record very quickly, in fact. You can also combine other things. Any of these fields that have a lot of text in them, you can go ahead and use any part of that text for that record. For example, maybe I wanted to find everybody in a certain city that we've had proposals for, or maybe I want to look at a zip code where we've had them all. Anything combined, or a project direct number up here, or the project ID is fair game to use. Now, over here, this is actually a multi-row portal. And for example, right now there's no records in here and I can't scroll it as far as a second record. But basically what we're doing in here is putting multiple different records in here that are for the proposal. You cannot search in a multi-record or record portal, but you can go to the portal record for the individual record and then do a search for all the records in the entire database related to this particular show area in here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and put number 1 at the top up here to bring me back to the record I was viewing. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and perform the find, and I'm going to say perform the search, and it brings that record right back in. It's lightning quick to search for record and data. Now the next thing we're going to be looking at, we already covered these things up here. I'm going to go down and do a little bit more about the action. I'm going to cover them. For example, if I did a find like I just did, you can no longer just see all the records. You would only see the first record. So if I went to this review over here, you'd see the record and selection, and that's what these are called, record and selection. The other records that were in here, and there could be 1 to the number of how many records you have, would only show the record that you just did the find for. So let's go back. And now what I want to do is, well, I want to see all the records again. And this is important. If you ever go to any list view and you don't see, or report and you don't see all the records, come back in here and say show all records. And now that record has returned to the master list. So it's a very straightforward, simple thing to do. I'm going to go back in using this time to get back in instead of the edit, so you can see that I can navigate with a single click to anywhere in the application. The next thing we're going to be looking at is this address for this company. If you needed to find out where it was located, and say you were going to go to another city and you needed directions, you can come over here and publish the map over in the corner and wait for it to come up. And what it's going to do is going to show you that particular company's location based on the address in the fields over here that you see in this area. This particular case, I have my office number on here and the location, and now you'll see it over here. By the way, it's about 15 years old, the picture that Google has of where our office is at. So for example, now if I wanted to find another location for a different company, I can go in and do a search for that company and then pop the screen over here up. And these are called popovers. This is a popover screen. Basically what it does is it has separate information in here that is not actually built into this screen. These are built in where there are portal records. And I can scroll through the portal records. Of course, I don't have one. I'll show you another one later with more data in it. But you could scroll down to see the next record and the next record after that. There's also a fast way to get down through these records where you go in and you say, go to the first to go to the top of all the records, or go last to go all the way to the bottom, or use the portal button to go to the portal for this particular area here and go down to a particular record within a search on that portal, as we covered later just a while ago. Okay, now we've basically covered everything in here. We're going to be coming back with more detail on this particular portal and how it's used. But I'm going to point out something in these buttons over here that are popovers. And the way this works, once you have created the information in this area, and say you want to create, first of all, the marketing budget, what you would do is finish this information. But before you do that, this particular screen over here is very important. And now you see it scroll. You would take the actual RFP request, or the RFQ, request for quote, and you would go through it and break down individually each particular requirement, and also note anything that might cost money or something that is a deliverable that has to be identified. You would go ahead and put the title block in here as far as what that is about, and then you would preview the information again in your proposal that you're reading from the and how you're going to put the proposal together back to the company that's requesting the information. You'd first state the requirement from the document that was provided to you to quote against, and then you put it in there in sequential order is the way you're going to actually use it. So let's take, for example, maybe I have an engineering company and we're going to do a survey for civil engineering. The first thing I would do is I would take all the stuff that's related to cost items and I'd put them in this particular portal. And then I would give them, obviously, the proposal number by putting that in here because it's right there. You can just bring it over and put it in there. And then I would put in the example information, in this case, what is the element of this particular proposal and the requirement for that particular element. And you get all your cost drivers and or deliverables that have to be identified. And you would complete the portal until you completed the entire request for a proposal, putting all the information that is pertinent to your bid. Before you can actually start a marketing bid or do anything like that, you need to outline and get all the initial information required in order to be qualified to do the actual job. Many times what happens in a request for a quote is that people read through the entire document and they don't outline it. They do not take the information out of it and address each cost element or deliverable and how they have to provide provide that information back in their proposal back to that company. If you miss more than one thing, chances are they're going to just throw your request out. They're not going to look at your proposal. They're going to just basically say these people did not read our request for work and so forth, and then they're going to tell you they don't want you. So you need to be very meticulous about doing that particular effort. Marketing requirements portal is what we're looking at. And it gives automatically gives it an ID when you add the first piece of information in here. The way these portals work, if you pick something and you put in information anywhere in there, it's going to create that particular record. So as I go down here, if I put in the proposal ID and then I started putting information in, it would add another record to the bottom of here. Since there's only one piece of information in there right now, and it is dropped in based on whatever is over here, what's going to happen as soon as you create this record, you're going to get another new record. So if I go up here and we're going to say test, I'm going to put in the test, and guess what? I have another new record down here that carried over the proposal ID number. And that's how you add in any multi-line portal. You can add a new record that'll come in there and it'll add it. Now, the reason I'm covering this in here is I'm going to show you that when you bring up the marketing budget and you've concluded all your references for your requirements, the first thing you're going to go to is the top of the screen, and you're going to start working on breaking down that particular set of requirements, and you're going to be going in here and looking at all the things that are related to that particular proposal requirement, and you're going to start breaking it down by the budgeting cost. These are globals, okay? And basically this is you in conjunction with your individual departments that will perform either the tasks or making deliverables, including vendors that you hire to do part of the job. That information would all be included for your budget. And once again, this is a multi-line portal. So as you go through each requirement or each element in this particular case, and it says the budget element example, and it goes through and takes that RFP item that you did on the last screen, and it addresses each one of those things to include the budget start date and so forth. Now, I'm not going to go through this entirely because we're going to be coming back in another video and we're going to explain the sequence of events that are going to occur based on each one of these and how we perform them in order. As you're looking down through each one of these, the main reason I'm showing this particular screen, and I'll show you the next one just so you see it, each screen is a little different and it's progressing through the process of setting up the project, running the project, detecting what things need to be done in which department, identifying the manpower that's required, scheduling that manpower, and there's the portal for the schedule, which has more details about each individual task person. Then the project planning. How are you going to do this particular effort? The planning portal, which is a portal like this one here that identifies each individual detail that you're doing. The task manning, what people are going to put in that project and doing what tasks. And then the project budget portal where you finalize the information over here in this popover and then come back to the main screen, which we were just looking at, and identify back to each individual requirement that you budgeted that item, and that item is now being costed. Then you provide it back into the budget screen so that they can come in with these numbers. So that's pretty fast to go through there, but we're going to go back and we're going to do these each individually, one at a time, and explain each one of these screens. But I wanted to point out that you are doing all of the input for all of the screens in this application within the main screen. When you add the data in these particular screens, you're basically creating a new record for each one of these particular efforts that you're doing here, where you can actually look at the individual screens and break them down for all this information. And it'll always be identified for Project Marketing ID 1 through all of these different screens. It's owned by this particular screen, and these are all sub-screens that you're adding data to. So from this screen, once we have our client, once we've done our requirements, then we start down through the process of doing all the identification, budgeting, setting up specifications, doing project drawings if we had to, and then inventory, assets, purchasing, quality assurance. Then we do labor work orders and invoice, and materials work order invoices portal. So that's covering most of the information. Now, when you go to the main screen initially, you're going to go, my gosh, how am I going to ever work on this? It looks very complex. After you conclude these videos one at a time, you're going to have the confidence to know exactly what you're doing and where you're at in the application. So let's say, for example, you've had a problem and you don't understand what you're doing. That's when you contact us on the support line. You can go to our website, go down in the bottom right-hand corner, click on the chat line, and talk to one of our support people. So you want to do whatever you're supposed to do and process from the tutorials. And if you run into any issue and don't understand it, contact us at ontargetsolutions.biz on the internet. And understanding, by the way, I want to point out before I leave this screen, anything that is going out to the internet with an actual screen like this one, you have to have a internet connection in order to have that particular element work. Where all of these items, inclusive, all are built into the application. But recall, if you're clicking on something like a map or something that requires internet connection, you will need that internet connection for this to function properly. Now let's close basically what we're talking about here, and I want to point out some things about the application itself. The application itself is primarily designed to work on the cloud in a multi-user environment, but it can be used as an individual application on an iPad. I wouldn't recommend it for an iPhone so much because of all the data that's required. You'd be scrolling all over the screen. But it can be done on an iPhone as well, especially if you're just looking in and popping online just to put in data in a couple of fields and then moving back to the application on the desktop. What happens when this is on the cloud, you have multi-user access, meaning you would have somebody log in with their own ID and password. Then you would go ahead and use the application as an individual, and you can have concurrent users as long as you're not in the exact same screen over here by a certain ID, like a portal record or whatever. If somebody's actually editing on that screen, you'll be locked out until they make their edit and get back out again. When you're using this on the cloud server, you can either use a browser on the cloud server. You can use the iPad or iPhone in a special application that's free from iTunes where you can add it and run it from the iPad or iPhone. And you can also, if you're using the server, you can access it through any browser for any kind of device. For example, if you're on Android, if you're on a Microsoft Slate or whatever, or an HP, anytime you have a browser that is supported, you can use it through a browser. And also, like I said, you could use it on a desktop machine if you wanted to, and gain it through a browser on your desktop machine as well. Okay, as I said before, if you have any questions, go ahead and contact us. Okay, now in the next video, we're going to go down in detail and start down through all these things and look at all the screens until we've gone all the way through them. And then when we get all the way through them, then we're going to do all the reports and how they function. So be prepared for a while. This is going to take some time to go through initially. Thank you.